Relaxing. This is relaxing. I love the sound of it. Here's how to construct a rock pile bubbler water feature that attracts so many different types of birds because it looks like a freshwater spring, and birds and other wildlife seek fresh water. This feature makes a little corner of your yard a peaceful place to land for both you and the birds. It helps relieve stress. I bought this feature 15 years ago, and it's recently been discontinued. I've tried to find it everywhere online. I can't find it. It was called Aquascape Aqua Rock Fountain Pit. If you can find it and it's for sale, send me the link. So I'm going to show you how to build it yourself. It's a similar version, but I've improved it quite a bit, especially when it comes to conserving water. So here's how to make it yourself from start to finish. This bubbler makes such a beautiful addition to your yard. Make sure that it is your focal point where you can see it from your house, the highlight of your garden. That's where you're going to want to put this bubbler. Bathing can be quite a dangerous endeavor for birds, especially if cats or accipiters like Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks are around. As they bathe, their feathers become heavier and they aren't as efficient or fast in flight. With any water feature, provide them with some sort of escape route, like a tree or a bush. To start, find a bucket with a flat lid. That's really important. They have these other lids that have grooves and things in them, just completely flat. Dig a hole in the ground that is slightly larger than the bucket, and place the bucket comfortably an inch underneath the ground level to allow for water to collect properly into the bucket. So one mistake I made on here was digging kind of a wide area on the top sides near the bucket. See these areas here? It's a place of stagnant water, and you don't want any stagnant water in here because mosquitoes can come and just lay their eggs in there, and you just don't want that. Underneath here, this is strange, but I do have some pipe insulation. When you are digging this hole, make the hole straight up and down and as close to the bucket as you can. That way there's no dips. And once all that's done, add Playsand to the bottom and level out your bucket. Drill a hole in the center to fit a 1/2-inch fountain hose and drill drainage holes, not near the edges. And the most important part is to cut a hole or drill a hole large enough for the pump's plug to go through. As you can see here, there's a lot of leaves down in here. I don't think you want the holes to be too small because then this will all get clogged. So make sure they're 1/4 inch and that should be good. You could also add rocks right here as an extra filter, but you will have to clean those rocks too. That will help to slow down the leaves from getting into the bucket. You can buy an in-ground fountain basin or reservoir that is much more expensive than a bucket. They range from $100 to $500, so keep that one in mind. But it will save you some time to not have to drill out these holes, but it's going to cost you a lot. For the rock stack, try to find a smooth flagstone, but make sure it's not shiny and slippery. You want the birds to be able to grip on there so that they can feel comfortable and not be swept away. And avoid sandstone because it's hard to clean, and over time the sand will go in the bucket and into your pump. You could find stones like this at a landscaping yard. I'd recommend stacking the rocks at the location you're buying them from so you can see how they fit and how they look and get an estimate of the height. Drill a hole in each of your flat stones using a diamond drill bit. Have someone help you to pour cold water on it as you drill so the bit doesn't break or overheat. So when you're drilling, you're going to want to have a little bit more space in the rocks itself to get the hose through. If it's too sticky, it's just a pain. So make sure you add a little extra room around there. And keep in mind, the thicker the rocks, the longer it's going to take. I bought my pond liner by the square foot at a garden store. You might be able to find it at Home Depot or Lowe's or places like that. Cut your pond liner to fit the space so it's large enough that the bubbling water doesn't splash outside of it. Make sure your liner's in the right place, make sure your bucket's in the right, make sure everything's where it needs to be, and then draw a circle on the liner where you're going to cut it. It needs to be right outside the drainage holes. But make sure that you don't cut a hole over where the pump hole is coming out, because that's not a drainage hole. That's just for the cord to come out of. Cut out measured strips of double-sided pond tape and stick it onto the lid so that it doesn't cover any drainage holes. Then stick the pond liner to it. Make sure that there's no openings that water can seep through. The original version of this had a flimsy pond liner that didn't last very long, so I had to come up with another solution to stop water from going over the bucket lid and down into the ground. I lost so much water. So using two-sided pond tape creates a seal, and it is a pain in the butt to do, but it's worth it. For this water feature, I'm using a 200-gallon-per-hour submersible fountain pump that has a water flow controller knob on there. It's really important that you get a pump like that because you're not going to have the leeway to adjust the height of your water. If the water isn't coming up above the tube an inch and a half at the highest maximum dial, you may need a more powerful pump. You want a pump that you could turn down and not have up all the way, and that's the only flow that you have. You could have the flow going way up high, but I've noticed when it is like that, the smaller birds don't like it. If you want to attract hummingbirds, make the height of the water 1 inch to 2 inches above the rock. I've added a mesh bag onto this for an extra filter. Most pumps do have a filter in them because this thing can get dirty. So you don't want debris to get into your pump, especially because it's under a tree. And I'm going to show you how to clean it in a future video because it is gross. It's gross. It's gross. Now, if you're wanting to use solar with this kind of pump, you might be spending some buck because to get enough water leverage, it's going to be expensive. Keep in mind that most of them only work in pure sunlight, and there are some that have a cord that you can move away from the fountain itself. Still, it's not going to work in shade or cloudy days very well, and it won't work at all at night. Fill your bucket with water. And put the hose in the hole of the lid. Put the pump down in the water. Make sure that your flow is good before you put your rocks on. I swear I've done it a million times where I'm like, oh, I didn't check the flow, and it's either too much or too little. That's a little too much. That is looking perfect. Push this down once the pump has been checked. Here is the pump plug. This cord hides underneath the pond liner. I hid an extension cord underneath edging and landscaping rocks, pretty shallow, so if I need to take it up for any other kind of yard work, it's easy to do. And I'm using an outdoor outlet. Let's start stacking the rocks. I like to put the largest rock on the bottom, and I try to make it look as level as I can, and continue. I do try to make the bucket level, but as far as the rocks, there's so many imperfections and it's not perfectly straight. But you are welcome to take a level out here and level them all the way up. And I'm trying to get this top piece as level as I can. Now notice it's going off to the side, but I like having the bubbler effect. Have it bubble on top of itself. So sometimes just twisting the rocks around can help you balance it. Maybe not today. I think you need to put a rock right under here. But you can be all scientific and mathematical if you want to make sure that you're level all the way up, but I don't think it's necessary. Ooh, look at that. See how it's bubbling all around there? That's perfect. So after you're done stacking everything and it looks really good and that's perfect, that's exactly where I want it to be, that's when you cut the tube. Make sure your pump is sitting at the bottom of your bucket before you do it so it's not floating in there. You just want that to be a nice sturdy base. Here I added different colored flagstones to cover the pond lining. I used to have river rocks all over this, these pebbles, and it was just the biggest pain to clean, and that's why I ended up using these flagstones instead. They're so much easier to clean. And there you have it. Isn't it gorgeous? Whether you want birds or not, this is a beautiful piece to have in your yard. Next up, how to make a floating rock bubbler in a flower pot that is a bird magnet. It's wonderful to put on your patio and your deck, and it's a lot easier to build than this one. Happy birding.